Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 151 of the Last Round Podcast. Thank you again for joining us this week, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Boxing Social, the country of India's application, Geo7. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and I probably never will. I should just Google and hear the translation through that audio feature that Google has. But wherever you're at, however you're listening, we appreciate it. Jumping right into it, fight reviews this past Saturday, the 30th of October, from the O2 Arena in Greenwich, London, on DAZN. Chantel Cameron remains undefeated at 15-0 with the unanimous decision win over Mary McGee. Cameron retains the WBC and IBF super lightweight titles. She was a champion coming in, right, Mike?
One each, yeah. Chantel Cameron,
so one of them
one,
had,
and McGee had one.
Okay, but I thought she had both belts, so this was a unification matchup of a sense, right?
Yeah, ended up being a good fight in the end. Obviously, Mary McGee, someone I think that maybe Matchroom would use again. You know, she was pretty game coming in, definitely had the experience, but Chantel Cameron, I think, was just too big, too strong at the time. I think McGee kind of got drawn in as well to a bit of a boxing match. Sorry, a bit of a scrap instead of kind of staying on the outside. I thought McGee would have tried to box from the outside, being like the slightly smaller fighter. And it looked like early on she tried to do that. But then at times she kind of like came down to, Chantel Cameron's kind of like staying in the pocket, just kind of slugging it out, which did make a good fight for us fans, though.
What was the original main event for this card?
Otto Wallin against Dylan White.
That's what it was. Okay, because I was trying to remember right now and I couldn't. It was on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, that's right. Because we had touched on the whole Dylan White thing and the test and medical proof. I think we asked Roberto Diaz of Golden Boy last week about that and his take on providing medical proof. So that's what it was. So like as I mentioned, this was a unification matchup, and Chantel Cameron is now the unified WBC and IBF super lightweight world champion. Who's in the super lightweight division at the moment in terms of females?
Well, this was the semi-final for the little undisputed route that they were doing. And I've completely forgotten who the other female is. It's Kaylee Reese, Chantel Cameron, Mary McGee, and who's the flipping other one it's in it?
It's on the tip of your tongue, Mike. Come on.
I know it's one of those ones where it's a Lou DiBella and Matchroom.
Serrano? Or is that she's in a lower weight class, right?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I'm pulling it up now.
Man, I'm just going to throw
Jessica Kamara.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say McCaskill. I was like, I think she's at a higher weight than that.
So November 19th, Kaylee Reese faces Jessica Kamara, which will be for the WBA, WBO, and the IBO. The winner of that will obviously face Chantel Cameron. And then obviously all 5 belts, including the IBO, will be up for grabs in the final. And then looking, kind of listening to what Eddie Hearn's been saying in recent interviews, the winner of that, obviously he's, probably got his money, hopefully riding on Chantel Cameron, will probably face, Katie Taylor. They'll move up in weight and face Katie Taylor.
We were talking about just before we came on air here that Eddie Hearn and Matchroom are arguably, and I wouldn't even say arguably, but they are probably the biggest mainstream promoter in boxing that's giving female fighters the biggest platform, right? I mean, wouldn't you agree?
I would say so. Most, other promotions, like we were talking about before we pressed record, Top Rank has like Michaela Mayer, Golden Boy has a couple, and, Marlon Estrada, Tanisha, whereas like Matchroom, you look at them, you have like Chantel Cameron, Katie Taylor, they had Savannah Marshall for a period of time, Natasha Jonas, Terry Harper. They have, quite vast amount of different female fighters going through the weight categories. And it's quite often that, they'll be, quite high up as well, on the show bout. So, yeah, they definitely are trying to push it as much as they can, which is good, trying to, hopefully, years from now, we'll look back on it and then, there'll be a lot more depth, a lot better quality instead of, someone coming in and just, kind of dominating in 2 or 3 different weight categories in like 10, 11 professional fights, which you just don't see, obviously, in the men's division. So hopefully, it ends up being like, the UFC's women division where like, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, it's, just got a lot more depth and a lot more competitive.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, like just repeating the information you were just said about Eddie Hearn, he does. I think he does have the largest roster of female fighters out of not just any major promoter, but I mean, I would, maybe say even any promoter in the world. Maybe I'm sure there's a smaller time, somebody from a small time promotion or a smaller time promotion at the moment who might be listening to this and say, "Hey, no, we have all these fighters. They just don't know who we are."
I don't think PBC has one.
It's like signed. Like, you mean signed to them, or what do you mean?
I don't think PBC has a female fighter, do they? I was just thinking then when I was trying to think of Top Rank, Golden Boy, Matchroom. I can't think of one that jumps off my mind that is signed to PBC.
Yeah, that's true. I can't think of anything. I mean, they don't really ever have female fights on their card. Like you give criticism to maybe other promoters or whatever in terms of not having female fighters. I think you're right. I think, and now that I think about it, PBC probably has, in terms of consistent female fights, they are less consistent with it, if not consistent at all.
Yeah, I can't think of one.
And I'm sure there's some out there. I mean, obviously there's been female fights on PBC cards. Nothing comes to mind at the moment, but just reiterating the fact that Eddie Hearn definitely has the largest roster of female fighters at the moment. Also on the card, the Savage, Alan Babbage, gets a second-round TKO over Eric Molina. Babbage remains undefeated and gets the 9th victory of his career. I feel like every time we talk about the Savage here, it's just entertaining. The guy, he just comes forward and he's like, I think you mentioned it before when we touched on his prior fights that Eddie Hearn likes to throw him on these cards or any DAZN cards or any Matchroom cards because it's entertaining for the fans in attendance. And he's a good TV fighter and he's a good audience fighter, if that makes sense. People, you can, I mean, we know in terms of fights, whether it's MMA or boxing, if people don't know your name, but you can fight and you can produce some type of entertainment with your fists in the boxing ring, people are going to be entertained. Like, oh, okay. Like, you don't have to be a Floyd Mayweather or Canelo Alvarez, but that was a cool knockout, or that was a fun fight. People can be entertained, and I think, like you've touched on before, Alan the Savage Babbage is right up that alley for Eddie Hearn, right?
No, he definitely is. He's kind of like, the modern day, like Butterbean or, like another Dave Allen where, in terms of talent, they're not going to win a world title, but they sell tickets, they're entertaining, they interview well. Alan Babbage is not the sort of guy where you're going to quickly go and get a beer or, go and get something to eat when he's on TV because you never know what's going to happen. He look at his fight. Was it 5 seconds? He had Molina down. Molina could have been out. So, he's definitely, great for TV. And then just his interviews as well, where he talks about himself in third person because he's, I'm Alan. And then he'll talk about, I'm the Savage. And, it's hard to control the Savage and stuff like that. He's just hilarious to watch and to listen to. So, he's definitely, great for Matchroom. But looking at this fight, I think Eddie said afterwards, no more paydays for Molina. Probably would have been easy for Molina just to have stayed down after getting clocked after the 5 seconds because, he got back up and it was weird because he was taking heavy punches, but yet he was getting dropped by the ones that seemed to just clip him. It was very odd. And then obviously, when he actually went down the final time, I'm not too sure if it was a punch or if he just kind of took a dive and he's like, that's it. I can't be bothered. Not the greatest fight really for Babbage. I thought Molina was kind of going to show something a little more because of, he got a lot of stick from the fight against Wardley where he looked like he kind of just, threw it in. And I did think he was going to come back and do the opposite. He's going to try and, prove people wrong and be like, I'm not just coming here for a payday. But he did the opposite. And I think the fact that he did that, no more paydays from Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, unfortunately for him.
Well, it's not like Eddie Hearn's ever said one thing and then he turned around and done it not long after. I mean, look at the time at Chavez Jacobs Jr. in Phoenix, Arizona a couple of years ago. We got a chance to interview him the following day at the Fighters Hotel. Obviously, Chavez was very popular there before he ended up quitting, quote unquote, because of I think it was like a nose or his eye or something like that. And remember, he got a lot of criticism for it. And then there's that famous gif of his dad, Julio Cesar Chavez, kind of shaking his head and putting his head down. And, people keep using that in the sport of boxing. But remember the following day, Eddie Hearn, we asked about Chavez, like, hey, would you work with him again after something like that? Like he's obviously popular still, but he got a lot of backlash for what he did. And Eddie Hearn was like open to it. He's like, I kind of have a soft spot for the kid, and remember that was picked up by a couple of news outlets in the boxing media world when they referenced our episode with him. And then people started criticizing Eddie Hearn. Like, I can't believe he would give somebody like Chavez Jr. Another chance after an event like that. And after what he did, he's not worth it. Don't give him the payday. So you referencing that, how he said that about Molina, I always think about the Chavez Jr. interview we had with him, where he kind of, is Molina. I'm willing to bet, and you tell me what you think. I'm willing to bet that Molina comes back on a Matchroom card at one point or another if there's another up and coming fighter who needs some type of name. Because obviously Molina's been in there with some pretty significant heavyweight names over the last several years, right?
Oh yeah, I mean that's why they use him, because of the fact that they always kind of pull it out the bag, like, oh, he's a 2-time world title challenger. So they just use that, as when he fights like Wardley and Alan Babbage, it's a little selling point. But I mean, I'm sure if it gets to the point where they're stuck for an opponent and it's a week, 2 weeks before a fight, and he's got Eric Molina, he knows that he'll turn up and might not put on a show, but I could see him using him again, but it's probably going to be like a last resort, because I'm sure that will be. That'll be thrown at him in interviews afterwards, like, hey, you've already said that you're never going to use him. And look at the last 2 times you used him on a Matchroom show. He just threw himself to the ground. So, yeah, I'm sure he'll get stick. But like you said, him and
he's a promoter.
They say one thing and they do something else. So
they're promoters, man. They're promoters. Rounding off the card, Craig Richards gets a 6th round TKO and the 17th win of his career as he defeats Marek Madja. Can you pronounce that?
Marek Matija?
Matija? Maybe. Matija. What do you think about this matchup?
A good matchup. I thought it was a good fight for Craig Richards. The British, light heavyweight division really on fire at the minute. The problem is are we going to see them all face each other? You've got like Anthony Yard, Lyndon Arthur, Craig Richards, Callum Johnson, now Callum Smith. But the problem is Eddie Hearn said in the interview afterwards, they all want world title shots. They don't want to fight each other. They don't want to, kind of have a British level fight against each other when they can, they're all really on the cusp of fighting for a world title. So it's an interesting kind of dilemma they've got. And Craig Richards obviously did really, really well when he fought Bivol. Callum Johnson's obviously been in there already with Zepeda-Vargas. Yard's already been in there with Kovalev. Lyndon Arthur's, really just kind of jumped onto the scene with his victory over, Yard earlier this year. So, they're all on the cusp. But personally, I think, all of us fans would love them to really fight each other, just to see really who's the best one in Britain, because it's one of those things where you'd probably get surprised and, somebody that's probably ranked 4th or 5th like Craig Richards would turn around and beat them all. on these last couple of performances, he did really well against Bivol, probably better than Johnson did against Zepeda-Vargas, better than Yard did against Kovalev. And he was probably 4th or 5th ranked when you look at, the top 5 light heavyweights in the UK.
Now that you mentioned all those names out loud in that division, it really opens your eyes on the matchups that you can have at 175 pounds. Obviously you mentioned Bivol, you got Craig Richards, you got Lyndon Arthur, Anthony Yard, and now Callum Smith, who recently moved up from 168. Now he's at 175. Those are some pretty decent names, and you could probably have some pretty fun matchups if you kind of all rotate them and put them against each other.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you got the mixture as well of some to Eddie Hearn, some to Frank Warren. That was it during COVID when they made those 2 posters about Matchroom against Frank Warren, Matchroom against Queensbury, and they lined up, heavyweights and all the different middleweights and all the different people that they could have make a great matchups. That's the biggest thing about boxing, is nobody wants to kind of fight at that level. They're always trying to skip out a level and go straight to a world title shot. So, I think it's just they don't want to lose to, a fellow Brit when they're hoping to get, a bigger, more substantial payday for, a bit of gold around the waist.
You think Bivol is... I'm betting money that Bivol is waiting for Canelo-Plant this weekend, and we're not going to see him fight until Canelo... If Canelo wins this weekend, obviously we'll touch on that fight a little later. I'm betting that Bivol is just going to wait on the sidelines to see if he can secure Canelo's next fight. Don't you think?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think we spoke about this before. Canelo fights that often, and he's fought most of the big names in and around the divisions that he's in. He's running out of opponents. He really is. He's running out of names that we'd really want to see. Does anybody really want the Canelo-Plant fight? No. But he's fought everyone else, in that division, really, of any nature. It's like Eddie Hearn said in an interview today that he'd spoken to Canelo about going over to the UK and fighting somebody in a stadium out there, possibly next summer. Who? John Ryder? There's nobody left.
Yeah, but I don't think Eddie Hearn, from a promoter standpoint, I don't think you really have to. If it is John Ryder, it doesn't matter who it is. Remember when Lomachenko went over to the UK? Where did he fight again? What arena was it?
When he fought Luke Campbell?
Lomachenko had went to the UK. It was like his last fight in the UK. Was it Luke Campbell?
Yeah, when he beat Luke Campbell, yeah.
So, look at how excited everybody was, and that place was sold out, because the people thought, he never comes over here, so let's watch him. Imagine somebody like Canelo. It doesn't matter who he fights, even if it is John Ryder. The UK fans will turn out for him because Canelo always fights in Las Vegas in the United States. So if I lived in the UK, and you tell me, if you were still over there, if you would have the same mentality, I would want to go. Be like, well, I don't think I'm ever going to see him. So if he's close to my home out here, I'm going to try to go and see this guy who's going to go down in the Hall of Fame and in history as one of the best fighters in the world.
It'll definitely sell out. It'll definitely sell out. I was more getting at the point of just like a worthy rival. I mean, it'll definitely sell out. He could fight anybody in the UK, and people that don't, want to fly over to Vegas, don't have the money to fly over to Vegas or whatever. Yeah, get to see him on home soil, make a night out of it. Get to see Canelo.
I think that I would love that. And I know and I know obviously the fight would probably be like at 1 or 2 in the afternoon here in the West Coast of the United States. But I think that'd be awesome to see somebody of Canelo stature go fight in the UK and a Wembley Stadium or something like that. I think that'd be awesome to see, because obviously the UK fans are very passionate, and it's a party over there. It's a party. I mean, we've talked about that, even before COVID, we were talking about kind of trying to attend a fight in the UK and doing a couple shows over there and stuff like that. Cause it's fun, it's a great atmosphere. I would love to see it. And I think Eddie Hearn if Eddie Hearn does get a chance to promote Canelo over there, which I'm assuming he would, I think he would go all out. I mean, look at case in point. Look at how much he did for when Canelo fought at what is it, Dallas Cowboy Stadium, and then when he fought in Miami, the type of event that he put on, especially for Canelo's entrances. I mean, if that doesn't give you some type of, idea of what Eddie Hearn would do for him, imagine what he would do in the UK in front of UK fans. I think it'd be huge. I could see it. I could see Canelo going over there, like a world tour or something like that. He obviously wants to fight in Mexico, but I can see him go to the UK. I mean, do you think that if he fought John Ryder, do you think Canelo would be the favorite in front of UK fans?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. The UK fans loved Lomachenko when he came over. And they just like, I think, good boxing.
Yeah.
I think they appreciate that a lot more than some other fans. I'm sure you'll still get people that just want, Ryder to win because Canelo's so good. Just kind of like that thing about, like the Patriots. People just want to see them lose because they dominate.
Yeah, because they're the franchise. The New York Yankees, the Patriots, the Dodgers, the big market teams, Canelo, Anthony Joshua. They're the franchise players, the franchise teams, and that happens. It happens a lot. But yeah, like kind of going back to the original point. It'd be nice to see a little rotation of like Bivol, Craig Richards, Callum Smith, Lyndon Arthur, Anthony Yard. That's a cool little rotation right there that I never thought about until you said it out loud right now. So hopefully they rotate them and see. One thing I did want to touch on before we move on to this past weekend's card in Vegas at the Mandalay Bay with Ennis on the card. You touched on Matchroom and Frank Warren. There was some recent news, and I don't know how reputable it is, or how accurate. It could be. It seems like it is, but who knows? But there was a report or some news that was put out that DAZN is in the process of buying BT Sport. What do you think about that?
I think it'd be huge, something they needed to do. Like anything, whether it being in the UK, if you're going to be successful, you need football, you need soccer. Like over here, they need to get obviously a slice of the pie, and the biggest sports, obviously being like MLB, NFL, basketball, hockey, even. They're the big tickets. They're the big things that you need. So it was probably good of them to come over here. Start with the boxing, kind of get a little bit of a foothold in the market, and then wait for those rights to come up. So buying, BT Sport and then taking over the rights that way is probably a good idea. Gives them access to that and other things. The UFC is shown on BT Sports in the UK. So if they buy BT, they'll have that as well, which is huge. So yeah, I think that's a really good move for them.
Yeah, that's huge. That's definitely huge. Who knows? Let's see how in the days and weeks ahead to see if it actually happens. But I think it's kind of interesting that if it does happen, that Frank Warren, I'm assuming, he would have to answer to DAZN's brass now and Eddie Hearn. How would that turn out?
That would be interesting, just having they buy BT and obviously they've got Frank Warren and Eddie all on the same channel. Like, is there a clause for them to get out? Are they going to be able to let's make fights together then? Very, very interesting to see, how that works out.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting, but we'll see. I know, I think, wasn't there reports earlier this year or maybe last year that DAZN was trying to bid or had plans to bid for the Premier League rights, and obviously it didn't work out. So I think they were just like, well, let's just buy the network that has them. It's just like, oh, okay, like we didn't get the rights. Like, what do we do now? Well, let's just buy them.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, don't you? In all the dominant markets like that, like I believe they have like the Serie A rights over in Italy, and then the soccer rights over in like Japan and other places like that. So Germany as well. Yeah, so you need those. They're like obviously going to be a staple. They're not going to survive on British boxing. That's it in the UK. So it'll be interesting to see when the rights come up for Matchroom's other stuff, like obviously snooker, darts, and stuff like that. When those rights, come up and expire with Sky Sports,
right?
Is Eddie going to take those over to DAZN as well?
Yeah, I wonder. That whole situation is very interesting. Obviously, I don't think I've seen any. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've seen any of the more prominent boxing media reporters report that potential news that DAZN is planning to buy or is in the process of buying BT Sport. I don't think I've seen that yet. Am I wrong, or have you seen anything in relation to that?
Only a couple of things, not from the usual sources like your
right,
like Coppinger and people like that who normally break the big news.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, because I still follow the news back home. I've seen it on there, rumored and stuff like that. That it's obviously kind of nearly a completed deal. So maybe they're just waiting for the to be finalized before they announce anything. But it does look like it's going to happen.
And there's also news. I don't think it's news. I think is it already confirmed, or does it seem like it's going to be confirmed? DAZN is entering the pay-per-view market. So it's like ESPN Plus. You have to have a subscription. And then depending on the event, you would have to pay an additional fee for that specific event as a pay-per-view in addition to the subscription. And there's potential news that the first event that could be on that pay-per-view calendar is Triple G and Murata on New Year's Eve or at the end of December. What do you think about that? What's your reaction to that?
I mean, if it's not too bad if it's only for the huge fights. If it's different to the model that they used to do on Sky, where some of those you'd pay for like a Parker and a Chisora, that's not a pay-per-view worthy fight, in my opinion. But if it's for like Anthony Joshua Usyk, you're like, okay, that's for the world heavyweight title. They're both commanding such a huge payday. It's probably going to need it. And also for us in the US, like, as long as they're not like $75, if it's like you're paying, I can't remember how much we pay out here for DAZN because I pay the yearly. Is it like $10 a month?
No, I think they raised it to 20. So it's honestly better to pay $100 for the whole year.
And that's what I did. Yeah. So like, if it's not, not $75 a month, if it's like $20 for like maybe one or two pay-per-views a year, and that's not too bad in relation to what we used to pay before, like $75, every 2 or 3 months for a pay-per-view, you're still probably coming out ahead. So that's not too bad, but as long as you're not looking at like 3, 4, 5 pay-per-views a year, as long as if it's just like the really, really, really big fights that everybody wants to see, like a heavyweight title fight, then yeah, because if you an extra $40 on top of the $100 a year, that's probably what we were paying before if you add it all up.
You're sounding too reasonable here, man. I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't want to see pay-per-view come back, at least in regards to DAZN, especially how DAZN entered the boxing market with pay-per-view is dead and this and that and streaming service. I mean, it kind of doesn't look good for them in terms of, how they entered the market, as I said, and what they're proclaiming now that is going to happen. But, it is what it is. They have to adapt to the changes that happen. They obviously, from a consistent standpoint, lost Canelo when he left Golden Boy, and then that whole legal situation. I mean, he could return back to DAZN after this fight. Who knows? But and then AJ's still kind of involved in a way, but Sky Sports still has. Don't they still have exclusive rights to him in the UK?
He's just finished when he finished the Usyk fight. So
okay, that's right.
He's technically done? A free agent, so I'm sure we'll find out soon. He'll be DAZN or Sky Sports, or maybe he'll do a Canelo and he'll just sell himself every single fight to the highest bidder.
Do you think BT Sport would make a bid for him?
If it's BT Sport and DAZN, yeah, maybe whatever they decide to call themselves, like, is it just going to be DAZN? They'll just buy BT and just change it to DAZN. I could think that could be an option for AJ. Like, why not just make yourself like a Canelo and you can go wherever you want and just, whoever's the highest bidder, and he just has Eddie Hearn helping him out in kind of a managerial role to make sure he doesn't, get screwed, or, he represents him and talks so well. Why not use Eddie like Canelo does?
Imagine having an event with Canelo and AJ on the same card, like as co-main and main.
You probably, if you have that outside, you could probably do like a festival like Coachella and have like 200,000 people there.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, you probably could. It'd be huge. They could charge so much money even for the nosebleed seats.
Just have it in a field. They all stand wherever they want.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, that'll never happen because having two events separately with them, especially in the UK, is probably more bang for your buck. Who knows? But yeah, that's definitely an interesting situation that I'm eager to see how it unfolds. Moving on, as I mentioned, from the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino from Las Vegas, Nevada, Zepeda-Vargas gets the upset. I would categorize it as an upset with the 9th round TKO over Jamal James, and this is for the WBA welterweight world title, the regular world title that's still floating around there, even though the WBA's made some executive decisions to reduce the number of world titles that they have. What do you think about this matchup and the outcome?
I agree. I thought Jamal James was the favorite going in just because I think he was more well-known. Butaev just kind of came out of, nowhere really, but, it was a great performance from him. Another, Eastern European. It's just comes over here. Another guy, with, friend of the show, Joel Diaz. And he looked a bit of a monster, didn't he? It's just, is he going to really get anywhere in the welterweight division? Is he going to really pick up, a proper, world title in that division? Especially with some of the names going in and around. You've got obviously, Ennis, Virgil Ortiz, Conor Benn, all the usual names in that division. Thurman, Garcia, if he's there, or 154, whatever he decides to come in at. It's the welterweight division still pretty stacked, but it's just trying to get those guys to fight each other.
Yeah, I mean, we're beating a dead horse every time we say that. I feel like we said that a million times throughout the last couple of years here on the last round. But yeah, I mean, I think I had mentioned previously, I think I mentioned it to Kevin Ioli when he was on last week as well. If he thought that Jamal James and Jaron Ennis would be potential opponents sometime in the near future, maybe in the next 6 months or so, since they were both on the card as co-main and main event. And I thought PBC would put that, especially if they both won. I assumed, okay, PBC probably put them against each other in their next card, or to put them, or whatever event it is, and have them battle it out. And then the winner of that one gets a shot at whoever, Spence or whoever has the world titles, Crawford, Porter, going from there. But yeah, who knows? But I think Jamal James will be back. I still think he has a lot of upside to him. You never know. Could be a rematch. I mean, I could see it happening. I don't know who would want to fight Butaev right now. He's kind of like he's kind of in limbo with like Bivol. He's too dangerous for the risk, and he doesn't really have the name recognition or the stock to bring to the table. So
that whole stable's like that.
Yeah, they're too dangerous, and their skill outweighs their drawing power and the stock they bring to the negotiation table, which sucks.
The Eastern Europeans are just so good. Like if it wasn't about the money and stuff like that, if it was more like the UFC, they'd probably dominate, MMA and boxing.
Yeah, probably.
Because it's a business, and obviously they don't sell tickets because they're so far from home. This isn't, essentially where they're from. They don't have the fan base and stuff like that. Hard for them to get, the big fights to really have to make themselves a mandatory.
We got to make a trip out to Indio, Joel Diaz's gym.
His new one, it's open. The new one's open.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I mentioned that we should try to make a trip out there, or or get him via Zoom or something, kind of get an update on his stable, his new gym, and all that. Chocolatito's out there now too. He's been out there training.
At Joel?
I think he's out in Indio. Yeah, I don't know if he's in with Joel, but he's in Indio training. So
with Caballero.
I think so. Yeah. I just know he's in the Coachella Valley out there. Also on the card, Jaron Boots Ennis also remains undefeated at 28-0 with a quick stoppage in the first round over Thomas Delorme, who takes the 6th loss of his career. This is pretty quick. I don't think a lot of people. I don't think we expected Delorme to go out in the first round. Delorme is a pretty battle tested, and he usually does, pretty decent as the B-side opponent. But Ennis made it a quick night. What'd you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I thought Ennis would win. I didn't see it being over in the first round. Delorme's kind of, experienced, battle tested, like you said, can normally take, a good beating, I guess. Maybe it's just over time, obviously not been out a lot. Maybe it's just father time's caught up with him, and maybe, the old punch resistance isn't there like it used to be. But yeah, Ennis is looking good, man. I can't wait to see him in there, with some of the names. Now you really need to see him in there with like a Danny Garcia, like a Keith Thurman would be good. Any of those more experienced, well-known guys.
Well, the thing is about him fighting those PBC guys is that he's not technically advised in an official capacity by Al Heyman. And that was news to me when I heard about it within the last couple of days or so. Because he's been fighting on PBC cards for quite a while, pretty consistently. Yeah. So I think it's natural to think or assume, okay, he's a Heyman guy, which makes sense. But I was reading that he's actually not advised by Heyman in an official capacity, and he's not with PBC in an essential official capacity. So don't you think that's going to affect how his ability to land fights with those PBC guys? Garcia, even Thurman, Porter. I mean, Porter maybe not, but Porter seems like he's just down to fight anybody. He's been proving it. Spence and those guys. Unless Al Heyman and PBC get some type of exclusive agreement with him for maybe 2 or 3 fights, like, okay, yeah, if you sign with us for 2 or 3 fights or whatever, we'll give you Spence, Garcia, Thurman, Porter, whatever, Because, don't you think that's the only way that Al Heyman would put any of those guys in there with him?
Yeah, Uncle Al just wants to double dip, doesn't he? He just wants the management fee, and he wants the promotional fee.
That's where it's at, isn't it? Yeah. Like, he's been doing that for a while, and obviously it works for him.
Yeah, we have no idea what his contract is. Maybe Al knows, like, hey, he's only got a few fights left, and then he's going to be a free agent, and he's banking on, swooping him up so he can still have all the dominant forces in the welterweight division. But yeah, I can see that it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? At the minute they just use him, they kind of bring him in. He feels like he's part of the PBC, and then eventually, one day when his contract's up, Uncle Al will sign him and promise him the stars. He gets all the big names, he gets all the gold. Maybe that's why he's always on the PBC shows. They're just buying time till they can snap him up.
Yeah, I would snap him up, especially with him and Virgil Ortiz kind of on a similar pathway. Eventually, you would hope that they meet down the line in what could be a pretty action-packed fight, which could be the next, Spence Crawford, even though they haven't fought yet, or Mayweather Pacquiao, just looking at them in their performances and stuff like that. You never know. Moving on, also this past weekend for Madison Square Garden, MSG, the theater actually at MSG, from New York City on ESPN for the WBC Silver super lightweight title. Jose Chon Zepeda also makes a quick night with a first round stoppage over the Puerto Rican Josue Vargas, who came in with a lot of hype behind his words, I guess is how you want to describe it, and then gets stopped in the first round by the barrage of punches from Zepeda. What do you think about this matchup?
Surprising. I was thinking when I watched the fight and he won, I was thinking, do you remember when you were chatting to somebody in his team before he fought Baranchek? And They were kind of saying about, they didn't know how much he wanted it. They didn't know, what was going to happen going forward. And now look at him. He has that fight of the year against Baranchek, and then he has this, one round destruction over Vargas. It was a good performance. It was one like just dessert. For Vargas, kind of being a bit of a douche. During the press conference, trying to steal the belt. Getting in front of him, and then he had that little scrap. The both teams kind of went at each other. Throwing punches and kicks. So it was a good performance for Zepeda. But I keep kind of saying is. He's kind of like treads water. Like after that Baranchek fight, it was, all over ESPN. It was, fight of the year contender. And you kept thinking, he's going to, jump up from here and he's going to get, one of the bigger fights. And then he's kind of had like 2 or 3 fights at like the same sort of level. In this one, he was fighting a prospect, like kind of strange for someone at his level to be fighting someone coming through. That's kind of something that like a journeyman or a gatekeeper would do. So, give him the shot at someone higher up. I understand, obviously, at lightweight, a lot of the belts are kind of tied up, and maybe he just wants the activity and the money. But getting him in there with like a name or something like that, someone, so he's kind of still climbing the ladder whilst he's waiting for those belts to, fragment, which they probably will do at some point, right?
I think he deserves it now. I think when we talked about this fight last week, I think I mentioned that. He's been obviously in some pretty battle-tested wars, some pretty rough wars, especially the Baranchek fight last year. But he's still showing that he's. I think somebody on Twitter described him. I don't know if it was on Twitter or I saw it somewhere, but as like the dark horse of the 140-pound division. What do you think about the comparison between him and like a Jojo Diaz? Jojo Diaz is like the dark horse at 135. Jose Zepeda is a dark horse at 140, where it's just like people aren't really thinking about them, but they have the potential to come in and, for one reason or another, or one way or another, beat all the main guys.
We thought he beat Ramirez.
That's true. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think Zepeda has, that's true. Yeah. I'm telling you, I think Zepeda, like he deserves obviously a world title shot now. Like, I mean, you think Top Rank would put him against Josh Taylor? I think they would. I think they would. Josh Taylor and Zepeda, I think they would do it.
I think
maybe a rematch with Ramirez.
I think next year he'll probably get a shot, or he should get a shot. I think, Josh Taylor's obviously going to fight Jack Catterall, and then after that, what's he going to, maybe he'll go up to 140 he'll go up to like 147 and maybe fight like Crawford or something like that. Because if you Josh Taylor, now's his chance to, really cash out, use the platform that he just built, becoming undisputed, and then, try to make as much money as he can. And whenever he decides to step up, obviously all those belts will be vacant. And obviously, Zepeda's had the WBC silver for, the last couple of fights, if I remember correctly. So that would give him a good chance to, fight for the WBC, or it should do. The WBC pretty much do whatever they want, but it should give him a good chance. And, maybe they decide, stick him in there and stick in Ramirez. Those two can fight for the vacant WBC title.
I could see that. I could totally see that. I could see Top Rank running back Zepeda and Ramirez sometime next year. I mean, Ramirez, I don't know if it's officially announced there, but there's reports that he's fighting. It's on the tip of my tongue. Who's he fighting? Another Puerto Rican, Olympian.
I can't remember. I read it as well.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be so pissed off because I forgot the name. He fought like Lomachenko. He fought Tank Davis. Why can't we think of the name? Puerto Rican. He was an Olympian.
Gamboa?
No, not Gamboa. Jose Ramirez is fighting. Oh my gosh! Why can't I remember the name? Why? Oh, is it another Jose? Oh man, I don't even know. It'll come to me. But I can see Zepeda and Ramirez. I mean, okay, let me ask you this. Would Top Rank put Zepeda and Ramirez in a rematch, or would they put, or who would get to a world title shot first? Again, Zepeda or Ramirez?
The problem you've got there is Ramirez obviously attracts a lot more with his fan base up in Fresno. So, at the end of the day, it's a business, and he puts bums on seats, where I'm sure Zepeda doesn't generate anywhere near as much money as Ramirez does, unfortunately.
But imagine a rematch between Zepeda and Ramirez at the StubHub Center in Carson out here in LA. Imagine that.
I mean, we know Zepeda's, pretty popular locally. And obviously Ramirez is, further up north. And
I know, but two Mexican fighters in Los Angeles.
And the first fight was really, really good. It was that close. I think, if that was somewhere a little bit more neutral, then I think Zepeda may have, picked up the title that night. Just the fact that it was in, Ramirez's backyard probably skewed the scores a little bit.
Yeah, but I like Zepeda, man. I'm a fan. I think he's the dark horse at the 140 division. Let's just see where he goes from there. I wouldn't know if he would match up in a rematch against Ramirez or get a title shot. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, Zepeda's a danger, man. Zepeda's a danger. He's there at 140, and I think people should, other fighters should realize that he's got the talent. He definitely has the talent. He's been proving it for quite a few years now. Moving on, fight previews this upcoming Saturday, the 6th of November, from the MGM Grand Garden Arena, again in Las Vegas. It's once again Showtime on pay-per-view. Saul Canelo Alvarez goes up against Caleb-Plant, and this is for the undisputed. It's been a while since we said undisputed. For the WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO super middleweight titles at 168 pounds. Obviously, Canelo and Caleb-Plant had that little, scrap. I don't know if I want to call it little, but that scrap that got much attention, even on mainstream sports sites, at their Beverly Hills, California kickoff press conference quite a few weeks ago. I just don't. I think I mentioned this before. Billy Joe Saunders was better or is better than Caleb-Plant. I just don't see. I mean, if you put a list in front of me of like, okay, Canelo's going to fight these 4 guys or these 3 guys in his next 3 fights: Callum Smith, Billy Joe, Caleb-Plant. I mean, am I wrong to say that I think Caleb-Plant would be the 3rd guy in line in terms of that list?
No. Yeah, to me, I think he's just a poor man's Billy Joe Saunders. That may sound a bit mean, but I think they have a similar style, and I think Billy Joe Saunders is better at it. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I think it's just because, and I guess my issue is that we haven't really seen Caleb-Plant. He's obviously lucky because he was at the right place at the right time, having that belt, and it's the last world title that Canelo needs in his road to the undisputed world championships at 168 pounds. And Caleb-Plant, obviously his best, most significant win up until this point was when he won the title against Jose Uzcategui a couple years ago. I don't know. It's not. I don't think we're saying, or I'm saying, and you tell me if you agree or not. I'm not trying to say that degrade or put down Caleb-Plant's skills. I think he's obviously good. He made it to a world title. He shows he can fight. It's more just taking into account the level that Canelo is on at this point in his career severely outweighs many of the opponents that come across the ring from him. And that's how I'm judging a lot of these fights, and especially this fight this upcoming Saturday. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, Canelo, whoever he goes in with, I think he's going to be the overwhelming favorite, right? And I don't think anybody at the minute is, unfortunately, on his level. He's just that well-rounded. And I think, Caleb-Plant really is only in there just because he has that last little trinket that he needs for the undisputed. And then if you just look at the people that he's fought, it's a huge jump up for Caleb-Plant as well. You know, he hasn't really fought. His best name on his ledger is probably Jose Uzcategui, and his style was really perfect for Uzcategui, who was very flat-footed, more of a heavy-handed fighter. So when Caleb-Plant fought him, it was perfect, really perfect clash of styles for him. So we'll see. Yeah. I see Canelo kind of stopping him late on. Very similar performance, I think, to Billy Joe Saunders, where I think he'll just try to attack the body, eventually slow him down. And I think Plant will, try to stick and move and kind of work his way around the ring. So I think it'll be a late stoppage again. Canelo will just take his time. And we know how confident he is in doing that. When he was fighting Kovalev, he was probably down on the scorecards, but he was so confident that he was eventually going to finish him off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Or maybe we'll have, remember when Marcos Maidana and Mayweather fought for the first time? Obviously, Mayweather was the big favorite, but during that fight, Maidana was pretty much fighting dirty and ended up getting some pretty close scores. And then he ended up getting a second matchup. So he got the double the payday, which he conveniently retired after the fight because he got two Mayweather paydays, which, wasn't bad at all, especially since he lives in Argentina. And American dollar goes really far in terms of living over there. But I don't know. That's what I think. Like maybe this could be like a Marcos Maidana, Floyd Mayweather type of fight, where nobody expected Maidana to come in and create that type of excitement against Mayweather because Mayweather, especially at that point, was such a big favorite against all the opponents that he fought. I mean, is it possible that Caleb-Plant could be like some type of Marcos Maidana and create some fireworks there?
No.
just one straight answer. That's it. Just no.
I think he gets hit too much. I think even in some of the performances against lesser known names, I think he honestly gets hit too much. He kind of like dives in, dives out, and I think with how good Canelo is, I think he'll time him, and I think he'll catch him coming in eventually. I just think it's a big step up. It really is a big step up for him to go from some of the people he's been fighting to then fight, pound for pound best in the world in, our generation. We won't see somebody like Canelo who's gone through a whole host of different people in different weight categories and really has fought the best people around. He just challenged himself, which is, unusual, unfortunately, in, today's boxing world. I don't see it. It would be a huge shock to if
obviously
pulled it off.
Obviously, you want to see a good fight from a fight fan's perspective. Like, if it's gonna get a lot of attention, it's because either Caleb-Plant wins or Caleb-Plant puts up a good fight where it's close. You know what I mean? What if you had to pick? What would you rather see? Just removing yourself as a member of the boxing media and just as a fan. Obviously you would expect Canelo, like 99% of the fans that do you expect him to win because the level that he's on. But what are people going to be talking about that Monday at work or the next day on social media or on whatever, or throughout the media or whatever? Are they going to be talking about Canelo's performance and he's undisputed champion, he's been dominating? Or would more attention be put on, hey, Caleb-Plant actually, he won. He's the undisputed champion. Or Caleb-Plant actually put up a solid competitive fight. Like going back to what I was referencing, Marcos Maidana and Floyd Mayweather, the first matchup. Mayweather won that fight. But how Maidana fought, he obviously gained a lot of interest and a lot of respect, even though he kind of did fight dirty. But it was funny because Robert Garcia at that time, who was his trainer, was pretty much telling him, like, you're going to have to get dirty with this guy. That's the only way we're going to get into him. And it kind of worked because the scores were close at the end. So, what would you rather see as a boxing fan?
I think what we will see, or what we may see, is Plant takes the early rounds, whilst Canelo kind of looks at him, kind of. I don't know.
Doesn't Canelo known for that though?
Yeah, I mean, he is that kind of, I don't know, everyone always uses it, but when they say like Lomachenko and Usyk kind of download and look at what their opponent does whilst they're trying to work out what they're going to do, I think we could see that. I think it'll be a very similar performance all around than the Billy Joe Saunders, because I think they're very similar fighters. I think you could see like Caleb taking the early rounds whilst Canelo kind of looks at what he wants to do, and then eventually he just wears him down and, stops him to the body, or, catches him coming in, because, Caleb likes to try to stay on the outside, and then he kind of jumps in with those hooks. And at some point, I think, Canelo might time him, just catch him coming in, and kind of like what he did to Billy Joe Saunders, where he kept ducking down to the same side, and eventually he caught him with that uppercut. So
I think, you tell me if you agree with this or not. Out of all the opponents not all the opponents, but the last few opponents that Canelo's fought, including Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Kovalev, and, the last couple guys, I think Plant, especially after that kickoff press conference and what happened there, how they kind of both went at each other, and people are just kind of writing him off in a sense, because Canelo is just so good. I think Plant, in terms of the negative attention, or not negative attention, but the negative side that he's embracing, or he's getting, in terms of being counted out already, even though the fight hasn't even happened. I think out of all those fighters, the last couple fighters that Canelo's fought, I think Plant is going to utilize that fire the most, if that makes sense, and possibly have more of a chance to show off some type of skill based on that negative attention that he's been getting. Do you understand what I'm saying, or was I kind of confusing about it?
No, I get it. It's I mean, I think Canelo-Plant built it's a persona, like we were talking about earlier. I've met him a couple of times in Vegas, and he's a really nice guy.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's
and
a nice
I think
guy.
he just knows that maybe like playing the villain, especially in like this fight, is something that he's just going to do just to sell tickets, like that Colby Covington MMA thing where you just play, the bad guy to, bring the attention and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I could agree. Like I said, it's not kind of repeating what I'm saying. It's not that we don't think Canelo-Plant's good. Obviously, he's a world champion, and he worked hard to get there, and he's a good fighter, but it's more taken into account of the level that Canelo's on. I think that he's been showing, kind of going by resume and the body of work. That's what we're basing it off of. I don't think we're saying that Canelo-Plant isn't a good fighter, isn't a great fighter, that he sucks or something like that. It's just the body of work, when you compare it to somebody of Canelo's position at this moment in his career, is the reason behind our opinions. And I think any reasonable boxing fan could say that. So it's not saying, oh, Canelo-Plant's he's not good, he can't beat this guy, or he's not gonna, whatever. That's not it. It's just Canelo is just so good. He's at that Mayweather level where anybody who Mayweather fought, especially after the De La Hoya fight, people just knew, like, oh, he's just too good. Who's going to beat him? Like, he's just too good. And he kept proving it and proving it and proving it. And Canelo's been proving it in the same way, but in a more dominant fashion, because he's more of a knockout fighter. And Mayweather, especially towards the latter half of his career, 10 years or so, he was more of a defensive fighter who went the distance and got the decision victories. So, yeah, I think it's just more the weight that we put on the body of work behind a Canelo Alvarez, and we're not slighting. I guess we're not slighting Canelo-Plant's technique and skills. It's just you're fighting not just a good boxer. He's an excellent boxer. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, what do you think?
I agree. I think it's good to have somebody like Canelo around now, because, he does get paid well, but he also does fight the guys that we really want him to fight. He's fought like Jacobs, Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, everybody, Mayweather, fought Trout, he fought he went up and fought Kovalev when, people didn't expect him to really do that. And I'm sure he'll probably do something like that again at some point when he runs out with people at 168. Like you kind of touched on before, I think after the weekend, Bivol is probably the only option, right, that I can think of. That's
maybe Charlo. Maybe Heyman told him like, "Hey, I'll have Charlo come up to 168."
I mean, that would be great.
In terms of a name and attention, if I was Canelo, I would listen. Be like, yeah, if he comes up to 168, let's do it, and I'll fight on Showtime again.
I mean, I think we'd all like to see that. I think we'd all like to see, Charlo tested.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I mean, who knows? But in terms of bang for your buck or attention on an event, make Charlo. And I'm sure Heyman's thinking about that. He's like, "Hey, Charlo, you're moving up to 168. You're gonna take the Canelo fight. If you don't, it is what it is." But I don't know, man. I don't know. I think Canelo is just too strong and too fast.
Like you touched on, obviously, Canelo with his resume compared to other people in, today's day and age, it's just unusual. How long have we been waiting for, Crawford to fight Spence? Where somebody like Canelo's already fought Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, Kovalev, Danny Jacobs, Triple G twice, Chavez Jr. when he was probably, in and around his prime. Even someone like Amir Khan, obviously Amir Khan was stepping up, but, Amir Khan was still, a name and was technically probably winning that fight until, Canelo actually starched him. So, we definitely need more Canelos.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm looking forward to the fight. Obviously the big fight events when a big name is fighting is obviously exciting. I'm eager to see. Are they fighting at the MGM? It's at the MGM Grand, right? It's not at the T-Mobile. I'm eager to see what Al Heyman and PBC are going to do for him in terms of like entrances or, event. Because this isn't a stadium. Because, I mean, if you compare it to the last couple where Canelo fought at big football stadiums here in the United States, Eddie Hearn went all out and made it like not just a boxing event, but like an entertainment event, especially in Texas with the Mexican fans there. I believe the singer was Pepe Aguilar, who sang him to the ring.
J Balvin.
Yeah, and that was in Miami at the beginning of the year. So, I mean, I know this isn't a big stadium, it's the MGM Grand, but is Al Heyman and PBC, are they going to try to roll out the red carpet for him like that? What do you think?
They may, but I honestly think Eddie Hearn's just swung him. I think, going from Golden Boy to Eddie and Eddie kind of rolling out the red carpet, getting the fireworks displays and, people singing him to the ring. I think that really sealed it. And then, you can see, like, when Canelo kind of like looks at Eddie on those interviews and he's like, who next? Who next? Like he has a good kind of banter back and forth. And then he starts wearing, is it the Dolce & Gabbana that they both wear?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. He gave Eddie Hearn like his own.
Yeah, and he bought him that like pajama thing that he wore to the weigh-in. It looks like they really have a good relationship. And I think he's even supposed to be going out there to kind of represent him at this, Caleb Fant PBC fight. So, I think, this will be like a one and done with PBC. And then I'm sure we'll see him, back on DAZN again.
Eddie Hearn's supposed to be here this weekend too. I mean, he's already said in quite a few interviews, especially the last couple of weeks and even this week, that he's going to be in attendance at the fight. So, when's the last time you saw Eddie Hearn on a PBC telecast? Show up. I think that's going to be kind of interesting. Hopefully they bring him up like the announcers or the commentating team, Mauro Ranallo and those guys, Brian Custard. Hopefully they bring Eddie Hearn up to the commentary desk to kind of give his take. I mean, he's a good talker. He's a good promoter. Why not throw him in there? If Showtime, if you're listening, anybody who can make those decisions, I would do it, man. I mean, it's your network, it's just bring him up. He could talk. He'll promote the main event. He might help get a couple of those people who are thinking about buying the fight. He might convince them. You never know. But rounding off that card really quickly, Ray Vargas, 34-0, goes up against Leonardo Baez, 21-4. Elvis Rodriguez, 11-1, goes up against Juan Pablo Romero, 14-0. And Anthony Durrell, 33-2, goes up against Marcos Hernandez. And then some quick news before we end this week's show. I believe there were some fights announced, right? Oh, I think it was recently reported within the last day or so that the Devin Haney and Jojo Diaz fight is close to being finalized. And it looks like it's going to likely land in Las Vegas sometime at the beginning of December on DAZN. Hey, man, you got like we talked about earlier, give Jojo Diaz his respect, regardless if he might not be the ultimate favorite in this fight. He's showing that he's got the guts, man. He's got the balls to go in there and be like, okay, well, couldn't fight him. How about you? You're next. And he's got a world title. Devin Haney's got the world title. So, I mean, and supposedly there's been, I think Eddie Hearn or has said that they've offered Jojo Diaz more money than he was going to get to fight Ryan Garcia. So, that's going to be interesting. And then there was also news breaking about who the officials for Canelo-Plant this weekend are going to be. So the referee is going to be Russell Mora, and then the judges are going to be Patricia Morse-Jarman, Steve Weisfeld, and Dave Moretti. Those are all pretty typical Las Vegas names, and I think any boxing fan is pretty used to seeing. So let's see if any funny business happens this weekend, which I don't think it would, but and obviously, in addition to the Canelo-Plant news or fight this weekend, the other big story of the last several days or so, Rolly Romero has been, I don't know if it's officially announced yet as of this day that we record this week's episode. It hasn't really officially been announced via press release from PBC or Showtime. But Rolly Romero is likely out as the opponent versus Tank Davis. And then it's been reports that Isaac Cruz is taking his spot, which I think, and you tell me if you agree or not, I think Isaac Cruz is actually a better opponent than Rolly Romero. I still think Tank wins. He's a good fighter. He's a great fighter. He's got that killer instinct. But I think Isaac Cruz is a better caliber opponent than Rolly Romero. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Isaac Cruz is, not probably as well known, but he's very game. He's a good fighter, probably more well-rounded than Rolly. Rolly's just more of a street fighter, isn't he? He just kind of looks for those big, one shots, and he really got a world title by, default. He really probably should have lost that fight, and managed somehow not to, give the guy a rematch. But yeah, I mean, it's still a good opponent. It's not up there in terms of a huge caliber name, and I'm sure Gervonta Davis will probably win again. He's just that good. He's proven time after time how good he is. We just want to really see him in there with some of the bigger names in and around that division. So hopefully one day we'll see him kind of mop up.
Yeah. Hopefully. And then also Vasil Lomachenko, high-tech Lomachenko, is back in New York City against Richard Comey in a 12-round lightweight showdown at the theater at Madison Square Garden on December 11th on ESPN. So Lomachenko returns. I think it's kind of interesting and funny how Lomachenko's fought quite a few times this year. And Teofimo Lopez, he's supposed to fight. I know he had the whole thing with Triller and the whole issues, and now he's fighting on DAZN and stuff like that. But Lomachenko's been a little bit more active and a little bit more consistent. And we all thought that Lopez was going to be pretty consistent, and after he won the titles, but there has, he's had that whole issue with Triller, like I mentioned. Now he's going against Kambosos, so maybe there'll be a rematch now that him and Lomachenko are fighting close to each other. There could be a rematch sometime next year, don't you think?
I hope so. We'd like to see those guys back out. Like you touched on, I think Teofimo Lopez won those titles and was really, really hot. And I think it's kind of died off. I think a lot of people now are kind of getting sick of all the social media, all the talking back and forth, and they just want to see more action than words.
Right. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. And then one last tidbit of news. It's also been reports that Tony Yoka will return December 11th as well in France on ESPN Plus. Obviously, people know him. Fans know him as an Olympic gold medalist. Still no opponent as of this recording. But there's been reports that he is returning on December 11th. But once again, guys, we appreciate you guys tuning in this week here on the last round. And before we do our usual sign off, Mike, go ahead and let our fans and followers know where they can find us and follow us.
Well, at the last round 12 on Instagram and Twitter, and be sure to join us next week. We'll be reviewing the Canelo Alvarez against Canelo-Plant fight, and then looking forward to Kid Galahad, Kiko Martinez, Jaime Munguia, and Gabe Rosado.
That's going to be a fun one too, Munguia Rosado. Can't wait to watch that one. So for my co-host, Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.